Jake Morrison walked through the tall glass doors of the Galactic Academy of Xenobiology. His boots made soft clicking sounds on the smooth metal floor. The building was huge, with curved walls that seemed to go up forever. Strange blue lights hung from the ceiling, casting an odd glow on everything around him. He was nervous, but tried not to show it. This was his first day at the most famous school in the galaxy. Students from hundreds of different worlds came here to study. Jake was the first human to ever get accepted. That made him special, but also made him worry. What if he could not keep up with all the alien students? The hallways were full of creatures Jake had never seen before. Some looked like walking trees with silver bark. Others had tentacles instead of arms. A few had multiple eyes that moved in different directions. Jake felt very ordinary with his 2 arms, 2 legs, and single pair of eyes. A tall creature with skin like clear crystal walked up to him. It had 4 arms and a head that was shaped like a triangle. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind chimes. "You must be the human student," it said. "I am Professor Vexhai. Welcome to our academy." Jake nodded and tried to smile. "Thank you, Professor. I am Jake Morrison from Earth." "Ah yes, Earth, the famous Death World," Professor Vexhai said. The way she said it made Jake feel uncomfortable. "Your planet has quite a reputation here. Very dangerous, we hear." Jake did not know what to say. Earth seemed normal to him. Sure, there were storms and wild animals, but humans had learned to deal with them. "I guess so," he said. Professor Vexhai led him through the school. They passed laboratories with strange machines that hummed and sparked. In one room, students were studying what looked like floating rocks. In another, they were watching holographic displays of alien creatures fighting each other. "This is where you will spend most of your time," Professor Vexhai said as they entered a large circular room. The Advanced Predator Studies classroom. The room was set up like a theater, with rows of seats going down toward a center stage, but instead of a stage, there was a large glass dome. Inside the dome, Jake could see sand and rocks like a small desert. Other students were already taking their seats. Jake saw a girl with glowing patches on her skin that pulsed with different colors. Next to her sat a boy who looked almost human, but his eyes were much larger and completely black. There was also a small furry creature that reminded Jake of a hamster, but it was wearing a tiny lab coat. "Everyone, please welcome our new student," Professor Vexhai announced. "This is Jake Morrison from Earth." The students turned to look at him. Some seemed curious, others looked worried. Jake heard whispers in languages he did not understand. He caught a few words that sounded like Deathworld and dangerous. Jake found an empty seat next to the girl with the glowing patches. She turned to him with a friendly smile. "Hi, I'm Zara," she said. "I'm from Kepler 442b. That is the planet we are on right now." "Nice to meet you," Jake said. "I am Jake." "So, you are really from Earth?" Zara asked. Her patches glowed brighter when she was excited. "Is it true that your planet has creatures that can kill you with just their bite?" Jake thought about snakes and spiders. "Well, some of them can, but most animals on Earth are not that dangerous if you know how to avoid them." The boy with the large black eyes leaned over. "I am Kevin Liu. My family moved from Earth to Terra Nova before I was born. But I have heard stories about Earth animals, very scary stories." Jake was starting to understand why everyone seemed so interested in him. To them, Earth was this incredibly dangerous place where only the toughest creatures could survive. They thought humans must be super strong or have special powers to live there. "It is not that bad," Jake said. "Humans have lived on Earth for thousands of years. We just learned how to be careful." The small furry creature in the lab coat bounced over to them. "I am Pip," it said in a high, squeaky voice. "I am from Thakaria. Our world is very safe. No big predators at all. I study dangerous creatures because I want to understand them, but I would never want to meet one." More students joined their conversation. There was Amy Carter, whose people could change the color of their skin. Ryan Murphy was from a world with very heavy gravity, so he was short but very strong. Lisa Chung could see heat with her eyes, which helped her people hunt in the dark. As Jake listened to them talk about their homeworlds, he realized something. Most of these planets sounded very peaceful. The biggest predators were usually small and not very dangerous. The students had grown up in safe environments, where they never had to worry about being hurt by wild animals. Professor Vexhai called for attention. "Today we will begin our most important lesson of the term," she said. "You will learn about predator behavior by meeting a real predator." The room became very quiet. Jake could feel the nervousness of the other students. Some of them were actually shaking. "The creature you will meet today is called a shadow crawler," Professor Vexhai continued. "It comes from the Vega system. This is one of the most efficient predators in known space. It can move very fast, has very sharp claws, and is extremely intelligent." Zara grabbed Jake's arm. Her patches were now glowing very dimly, which Jake guessed meant she was scared. "Are we going to be safe?" she whispered. "Yes," Professor Vexhai said, hearing her question. "You will be completely safe. There are strong barriers between you and the creature, but your bodies will still react as if you were in real danger. We will measure these reactions to understand how different species respond to threats." Jake looked around the room. Most students looked terrified. Pip was hiding behind his notebook. Kevin's large eyes were even wider than usual. Amy's skin had turned completely white, but Jake felt something different. He was not scared, he was curious. Back on Earth, his grandfather had taught him about dangerous animals. Bears, wolves, big cats. His grandfather always said that the key to dealing with dangerous animals was to understand them, not to be afraid of them. "The shadow crawler will be brought in soon," Professor Vexhai said. "Each of you will be tested individually. We want to see your natural instinctive responses to a predator threat." Jake wondered what his response would be. He had never seen an alien predator before, but he had been camping in areas with bears and mountain lions. His grandfather had taught him to be alert but not panicked. Fear could make you do stupid things that might get you killed. Who would like to volunteer to go first? Professor Vexhai asked. No one raised their hand. The students all looked at each other, hoping someone else would volunteer. Jake started to raise his hand, but Zara pulled it down. "Are you crazy?" she whispered. "What if something goes wrong?" "Nothing will go wrong," Jake said quietly. "Besides, someone has to go first." But before he could volunteer, Professor Vexhai made the decision for them. "We will go in alphabetical order by first name," she said. "That means Amy will be first." Amy's skin turned even whiter. "I do not think I can do this," she said in a shaky voice. "You will be fine," Professor Vexhai said gently. "Remember, the creature cannot hurt you. But your species needs to see how you naturally react to danger. This is how we learn." Jake watched as Amy slowly walked toward the glass dome. He could see her legs shaking. Other students were whispering prayers in their own languages. This was clearly the most frightening thing most of them had ever faced. Jake thought about his grandfather again. Fear is just your body getting ready to deal with danger, his grandfather had always said. The trick is to use that fear, not let it use you. He had a feeling he was going to need that advice very soon. Amy Carter walked slowly toward the glass dome. Her skin had turned completely white, and Jake could see her hands shaking. The other students watched in silence as she approached the testing area. Professor Vexhai pressed several buttons on a control panel. The glass dome began to hum with energy. Blue lights appeared around the edges, showing that the protective barriers were active. "Remember, Amy," Professor Vexhai said in a calm voice, "the creature cannot hurt you. But your body does not know that. We want to see how your people naturally react to danger." Amy nodded but did not look convinced. She stepped into a small chamber next to the dome. The chamber had glass walls too, so she could see the creature. But there were two barriers between them. Jake heard a mechanical sound from below the dome. A metal door slid open and something moved in the shadows. At first, Jake could not see it clearly. Then it stepped into the light. The shadow crawler was like nothing Jake had ever seen. It was about the size of a large dog, but it moved like a giant spider. Its body was covered in black armor that looked like it was made of polished stone. It had 6 legs, each ending in claws that looked sharp enough to cut through metal, but the most frightening thing was its eyes. It had 4 of them, and they could move independently. 2 were looking at Amy, 1 was scanning the room, and 1 was staring directly at Jake. The creature's intelligence was clear in those eyes. This was not just a dangerous animal. This was a thinking predator. Amy made a small crying sound when she saw the creature. Her skin began to change colors rapidly, flashing from white to gray to brown. Jake realized she was trying to camouflage herself, but her fear was making it hard to control. The shadow crawler noticed the color changes immediately. It moved closer to Amy's chamber, its head tilting as it studied her. When Amy turned brown to match the wall behind her, the creature's eyes narrowed. It was learning. Fascinating, Professor Vexhai said, making notes on her tablet. The creature recognizes camouflage adaptation. Amy, your species' natural response is working exactly as it should. Amy stayed perfectly still for several minutes. The shadow crawler lost interest and moved away to explore other parts of the dome. Only then did Amy's colors return to normal. Well done, Professor Vexhai said as Amy left the chamber. Your people's camouflage response is very effective. Amy walked back to her seat on unsteady legs. Her skin was still pale, and she was breathing hard. That was the most scared I have ever been, she whispered to Jake. You did great, Jake said, trying to make her feel better. Your camouflage was amazing. Next was Kevin Liu. As he walked to the chamber, Jake noticed that his large black eyes were moving constantly, taking in every detail of the room. Kevin's people had evolved on a world with many predators, so they had developed excellent eyesight and quick reflexes. When Kevin entered the chamber, the shadow crawler immediately focused on him. Kevin's response was very different from Amy's. Instead of trying to hide, he began to move in a strange pattern. He would take 2 steps to the left, then 1 step back, then 3 steps to the right. What is he doing? Zara whispered. Evasive movement patterns, Professor Vexhai explained. Kevin's people evolved to confuse predators by moving unpredictably. The creature cannot figure out where he will go next. The shadow crawler tried to follow Kevin's movements, but it kept guessing wrong. Kevin would step left, and the creature would move left, but then Kevin would suddenly go right. After a few minutes, the creature looked frustrated and stopped trying to track him. Excellent work, Kevin, Professor Vexhai said. Your species' confusion tactics are very effective. Lisa Chun was next. She had special heat-sensing eyes that glowed red in the dark. When she entered the chamber, she immediately crouched down low and began to move very slowly around the edges of the room. The shadow crawler noticed her but seemed confused. Lisa was moving so quietly and smoothly that she barely seemed to be there. Her people had evolved to be perfect hunters, and those same skills worked for avoiding predators. Lisa's people are apex predators on their world, Professor Vexhai explained. She is using hunting techniques for defense. Very interesting adaptation. Lisa circled the entire chamber without the shadow crawler showing much interest in her. When she finished, she stood up and walked out calmly. That was easy, Lisa said with a smile. I hunt things more dangerous than that back home. Jake was impressed. Each species had developed different ways to deal with predators. Amy's people hid, Kevin's people confused them, and Lisa's people out-hunted them. Pip was next, and the small furry creature was shaking with fear. When he entered the chamber, he immediately ran to the far corner and curled up in a ball. His fur puffed out, making him look bigger, and he made high-pitched squeaking sounds. The shadow crawler moved toward him, but then something unexpected happened. Pip's squeaking got louder and faster. Suddenly, other students in the room began to feel strange. Jake felt a strong urge to help Pip, to protect him from the creature. Distress calls, Professor Vexhai said with interest. Pip's people evolved to call for help when threatened. The calls trigger protective instincts in other species. Jake could feel the call working on him. He wanted to jump up and help Pip, even though he knew Pip was safe. Around the room, other students were shifting. Uncomfortably in their seats, the shadow crawler seemed affected too. It moved away from Pip and began pacing restlessly around the dome. The high-pitched sounds were clearly bothering it. "Very good, Pip," Professor Vexhai said. "Your species group survival strategy is working perfectly." Ryan Murphy was next. He was short but very muscular because he came from a high-gravity world. When he entered the chamber, he did not try to hide or run. Instead, he stood very still and watched the shadow crawler carefully. The creature approached him, and Ryan slowly raised his arms above his head. This made him look bigger and more threatening. The shadow crawler stopped and studied him. Then Ryan did something surprising. He began to growl. It was a low, rumbling sound that seemed to come from deep in his chest. The shadow crawler's eyes widened, and it took a step back. "Threat display," Professor Vexhai said. "Ryan's people evolved to face predators directly. They make themselves look bigger and more dangerous." Ryan continued his threat display for several minutes. The shadow crawler kept its distance, clearly unsure what to make of this small but aggressive creature. "Excellent," Professor Vexhai said as Ryan left the chamber. "Your people's intimidation tactics are very effective." Jake was fascinated by what he was seeing. Each species had found a different solution to the same problem: hide, confuse, outhunt, call for help, or fight back. All of them worked in different ways. Zara was next, and her glowing patches were flickering nervously. When she entered the chamber, her patches began to pulse in a rapid pattern. Jake had never seen her do this before. "Zara's people use light communication," Professor Vexhai explained. "She is sending a warning signal to others of her kind." The shadow crawler seemed fascinated by the light patterns. It moved closer to study them, tilting its head from side to side. Zara's patches began to pulse faster, and the creature backed away. "The light patterns are confusing to predators," Professor Vexhai said. "They cannot tell if the lights mean danger or if they are looking at something poisonous." Jake watched as more students took their turns. Each one showed him something new about how different species had adapted to survive. Some ran very fast. Others became very small, and a few even seemed to disappear completely. But as Jake watched, he realized something important. All of these responses were about avoiding the predator. Hide from it, confuse it, call for help, or run away. None of the students had actually faced the creature directly. Even Ryan, who had growled and made threat displays, had been trying to make the creature leave him alone. No one had actually challenged the shadow crawler. Jake thought about his grandfathers. Lessons. Back on Earth, humans had learned to deal with dangerous animals in many ways. Sometimes they avoided them, sometimes they scared them away. But sometimes, when there was no other choice, humans had to face predators directly. "Jake Morrison," Professor Vexhai called, "you are next." Jake stood up slowly. Around the room, all the students were watching him with interest. They had heard about humans and Earth, but they had never seen a human face a real predator before. Jake walked toward the chamber. He could feel everyone's eyes on him. The shadow crawler was pacing restlessly in the dome, its 4 eyes scanning the room. When it saw Jake approaching, all 4 eyes focused on him. Jake paused at the entrance to the chamber. He could hear his heart beating faster, but he was not afraid. He was alert, ready, like his grandfather had taught him to be when dealing with dangerous animals. The shadow crawler moved to the center of the dome and crouched low, watching Jake intently. Its claws scraped against the floor as it shifted its weight. Jake could see the intelligence in its eyes, and he knew the creature was studying him just as carefully as he was studying it. Jake took a deep breath and stepped into the chamber. The test was about to begin. Jake stepped into the chamber and closed the door behind him. The shadow crawler was waiting in the center of the dome, its 4 eyes locked on him. The creature's black armor gleamed under the lights, and Jake could see the sharp claws on each of its 6 legs. Professor Vexhai's voice came through the speakers. "Jake, remember that you are completely safe. The barriers will protect you. Just let your body react naturally." Jake nodded but kept his eyes on the shadow crawler. The creature was about 10 feet away from him, separated by the thick glass barrier. Jake could see it breathing slowly, its body tense and ready to move. The other students were watching from their seats. Jake could feel their nervousness, their curiosity about what the human would do. He had seen all their responses. Hide, run, confuse, call for help, or try to scare the predator away. But Jake remembered his grandfather's words. Sometimes, son, the best way to deal with a dangerous animal is to show it that you are not afraid. Animals can smell fear, and fear makes you look like prey. Jake took a slow step forward. The shadow crawler's eyes widened slightly. It had seen all the other students try to get away from it or hide from it. This was the first time a student had moved closer. Jake took another step. He was now only 8 feet from the barrier. The shadow crawler shifted its weight, unsure what to do. Its head tilted to one side, studying this strange behavior. What is he doing? Zara whispered from her seat. He is moving toward it, Amy said. In a shocked voice, why is he moving toward it? Professor Vex-High was watching her instruments carefully. His heart rate is elevated, but his stress hormones are different from the other students. Very interesting. Jake took another step. He was now close enough to see the details of the creature's face. It had a mouthful of sharp teeth, and its eyes were a deep red color. But Jake was not looking at the teeth or the claws. He was looking into the creature's eyes. His grandfather had taught him that eyes told you everything about an animal. Angry eyes, scared eyes, hungry eyes, curious eyes. Jake could see that the shadow crawler was confused. It did not understand why this creature was approaching it instead of running away. Jake stopped moving forward and stood perfectly still. He kept his eyes focused on the shadow crawler's eyes, not looking away. This was something else his grandfather had taught him. Never look away first, son. That tells the animal you are weak. The shadow crawler took a small step back. Then it stopped as if it could not believe what it had just done. A predator backing away from prey was not normal behavior. Did it just move away from him? Kevin asked. I think it did, Ryan said. But that does not make sense. Jake began to breathe more deeply. He made his chest bigger and his shoulders wider. He was making himself look larger without making any threatening movements. The shadow crawler watched this with growing uncertainty. Then Jake did something that surprised everyone in the room. He began to make a sound. It was a low, rumbling noise that seemed to come from deep in his chest. It was not a growl like Ryan had made. It was something else, something that sounded almost like a motor running. The shadow crawler's eyes went wide. It took another step back, then another. The creature was now pressed against the far wall of the dome, as far from Jake as it could. Professor Vex-High looked at her instruments in shock. This is impossible. The shadow crawler's brain patterns are showing submission responses. How is this happening? Jake continued to stare at the creature. He did not move toward it, but he did not move away either. He just stood there, calm and steady, making the low, rumbling sound. His presence filled the chamber. The shadow crawler began to pace back and forth along the far wall. It kept looking at Jake, then looking away, then looking back. The creature was clearly agitated, but it was not showing any signs of wanting to attack. Look at its body language, Lisa said. It is acting like it is the one that is trapped. Jake slowly raised his arms, not above his head like Ryan had done, but out to his sides. This made him look even bigger. The shadow crawler pressed itself against the wall and made a small whimpering sound. It is afraid of him, Pip squeaked. The predator is afraid of Jake. Professor Vex-High was frantically checking her equipment. The readings must be wrong. This creature has never shown fear responses before. It is one of the most successful predators in the galaxy, but the evidence was right in front of them. The shadow crawler was cowering against the wall, its eyes dotting around the dome as if looking for an escape route. It had completely forgotten about hunting. All it wanted now was to get away from the human. Jake took one more step forward. The shadow crawler pressed itself even harder against the wall and made a louder whimpering sound. The creature's claws were scratching against the floor as it tried to back away further. Jake, that is enough, Professor Vex-High said through the speakers. Please step back from the barrier. Jake nodded and took a step back. As soon as he moved away, the shadow crawler relaxed slightly, but it kept its eyes on Jake, watching him carefully. Jake turned around and walked toward the exit of the chamber. As he did, he could see the faces of his classmates. They were all staring at him with wide eyes and open mouths. None of them could believe what they had just seen. "How did you do that?" Amy asked as Jake sat down. "I just remembered what my grandfather taught me," Jake said. "He used to say that most animals, even predators, do not want to fight unless they have to. If you show them that you are not afraid and that you might be dangerous too, they will usually look for easier prey." "But you did not have any weapons," Zara said. "You did not even make threatening movements." Jake thought about this. "I think it was about attitude. I showed the creature that I was not prey. I was calm, I was not afraid, and I was ready to fight if I had to." The creature could sense that. Professor Vexhai came over to their group. Her crystal skin was flickering rapidly, which Jake had learned meant she was excited or confused. "Jake, what you just did should not have been possible," she said. "The shadow crawler is an apex predator. It has no natural enemies. It should not have shown submission to any creature, especially not a creature it had never seen before." "Maybe that was the problem," Jake said. "It had never seen a human before. It did not know what to expect. But it has seen thousands of different species," Professor Vexhai said. "It has been tested against creatures from all over the galaxy. None of them have ever made it back down." Jake looked back at the dome. The shadow crawler was still pressed against the far wall, watching him. Even though he was no longer in the chamber, the creature seemed nervous about his presence in the room. "Maybe humans are different," Jake said. "My grandfather always said that humans are persistence hunters. We do not give up easily. Maybe the creature could sense that." Dr. Kethmer, another professor, had joined them. He was a tall, thin creature that looked like a walking stick insect. He had been taking notes throughout the entire test. "Jake, can you tell us more about these persistence hunting techniques?" Dr. Kethmer asked. Jake tried to think of how to explain it. "Well, humans used to hunt by chasing animals for very long distances. We were not as fast as the animals, but we could run for much longer. We would chase them until they were too tired to run anymore. So you would outlast your prey rather than overpower it," Dr. Kethmer said. Double quotes. "Yes, exactly. And we would work together as a team. We would take turns chasing the animal so it could never rest. Eventually, it would have to stop running, and then we could catch it." Professor Vexhai looked at her instruments again. "That would explain some of the readings we got. Your body chemistry was different from the other students. You were preparing for a long confrontation, not a quick escape." "But how did the shadow crawler know this?" Dr. Kethmer asked. Jake thought about this question. "Maybe it could sense something about my intentions. I was not trying to get away from it. I was not trying to hide. I was just ready to deal with whatever happened." "And the creature recognized this as a threat," Professor Vexhai said slowly. "It realized that you were not prey behavior. You were predator behavior." Jake nodded. "My grandfather always said that predators can recognize other predators. They know when they are dealing with something that might fight back." The room was very quiet as everyone thought about this. Jake looked around at his classmates. They were all staring at him with new respect, but also with a little bit of fear. "Does this mean humans are predators?" Pip asked in a small voice. Jake considered this question carefully. "I think humans can be predators when they need to be. But we're also many other things. We can be teachers, friends, helpers. We choose what we want to be." "But you made an apex predator back down without even touching it," Amy said. "That is not normal," Jake smiled. "Maybe normal is different for different species. What seems normal to me might seem strange to you, and what seems normal to you might seem strange to me." Professor Vexhai was still studying her readings. "Jake, I think you have just changed everything we thought we knew about predator behavior. This will require much more study." Jake looked back at the shadow crawler one more time. The creature was still watching him, but it seemed calmer now. It had accepted that the human was not going to approach it again. "I just did what felt right," Jake said. "My grandfather taught me well." But as Jake sat there, he began to realize. The news about Jake's encounter with the shadow crawler spread through the academy like wildfire. Within hours, professors from every department were coming to look at the recordings. Students gathered in small groups, whispering about what they had seen. Professor Vexhai had called an emergency meeting with the other faculty members. They sat in a circle around a large table in the main conference room. The recording of Jake's test played on a holographic display in the center of the table. "I have watched this recording 50 times, Professor Vexhai said. The data does not lie. The shadow crawler showed clear submission responses to the human." Dr. Kethmer was reviewing the biological readings on his tablet. "Look at these brain scans from the creature." When the human approached, the shadow crawler's predator recognition centers activated. It classified Jake as another predator, not as prey, but that should be impossible, said Dr. Morin, the head of the biology department. She was a short, round creature with fur that changed color with her emotions. Right now, her fur was bright yellow, which meant she was confused. The shadow crawler has never encountered a human before. How could it recognize human predator? Behavior? Perhaps, Dr. Kethmer said slowly. Predator behavior is more universal than we thought. Maybe there are certain signals that all predators give off, regardless of their species? Professor Vexhai nodded. That would explain the creature's reaction. But what signals was Jake giving off? He did not show his teeth, he did not make aggressive movements, he did not even raise his voice. But he did several interesting things, Dr. Morin said, reviewing her notes. He maintained direct eye contact, he moved toward the threat instead of away from it, he made himself appear larger, and he produced that low rumbling sound. Dr. Kethmer pulled up more data on his tablet. The sound is particularly interesting. It was not a growl like other species produce. It was something else, almost like a motor running in his chest. Could it be some kind of natural human threat display? Dr. Morin asked. I do not think so, Professor Vexhai said. When I spoke to Jake after the test, he did not seem to realize he was making the sound. It appeared to be unconscious behavior. Meanwhile, Jake was sitting in the student cafeteria with his new friends. The cafeteria was a large, bright room with tables shaped like flowers. Different species ate different types of food, so there were many food stations around the room. Jake was eating something that looked like pasta but tasted like fruit. Zara was having what looked like colorful soup that glowed in the bowl. Kevin was eating small cubes that floated in the air until he caught them with his mouth. Everyone is talking about what you did, Zara said, her patches glowing softly. Some students are saying you have special powers, Jake laughed. I do not have special powers, I just did what felt natural. But normal people do not make predators run away, Amy said. Her skin was a normal color now, but Jake could see she was still thinking about the test. I have never seen anything like it. Pip bounced up to their table. The small furry creature was carrying a notebook that was almost as big as he was. Jake, I have been reading about human evolution. It says here that humans used to hunt animals much bigger than themselves. That is true, Jake said. My grandfather told me stories about how humans used to hunt mammoths and other large animals. But how? Ryan asked. Humans are not very big or strong compared to those animals. Jake thought about this. We used tools and we worked together, but mostly we were patient. We would follow an animal for days or weeks until we found the right time to hunt it. Days or weeks? Kevin said, his large eyes getting even wider. Most hunters on my world give up after a few hours. That is what persistence hunting means, Jake said. You do not give up. You keep following your prey until you get it. Lisa leaned forward. But that means you were always thinking about hunting. Even when you were not actually hunting, you were planning for it. I guess so, Jake said. My grandfather always said that humans are always thinking ahead. We plan for things that might happen later. Maybe that is what the shadow crawler sensed, Zara said. Maybe it could tell that you were always ready to hunt. Their conversation was interrupted by Professor Vexhai approaching their table. Jake, may I speak with you privately? Jake followed her to a quiet corner of the cafeteria. Professor Vex-High looked excited, her crystal skin flickering rapidly. "Jake, we need to do more tests," she said. "What happened today was extraordinary. We need to understand how you did it." "I am happy to help," Jake said. "But I am not sure I can do it again. I just did what felt right in the moment." "That is exactly what we need to study," Professor Vex-High said. "We want to understand these instincts. They might be the key to understanding human behavior." The next day, Jake found himself in a much larger laboratory. There were cameras everywhere, and machines that beeped and hummed. Several professors were there, along with some scientists Jake had never seen before. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had arrived that morning from the Terran Research Institute. She was a human woman with short gray hair and kind eyes. Jake was happy to see another human, especially one who seemed to understand what was happening. "Jake, I'm Dr. Rodriguez," she said, shaking his hand. "I have been studying human behavior for many years. What you did yesterday was remarkable." "Thank you," Jake said. "But I still do not understand what was so special about it." "Let me explain," Dr. Rodriguez said. "Most species in the galaxy evolved to avoid predators. They developed ways to hide, run away, or call for help, but humans evolved differently." She pulled up a holographic display showing Earth's landscape. Earth was a very dangerous place. There were many predators, and humans were not the strongest or fastest animals. So humans had to become smarter. "But lots of animals are smart." Jake said, "Yes, but human intelligence was different. Humans learned to hunt in groups, to make tools, and to plan for the future. But most importantly, humans learned to think like predators." Jake was beginning to understand. "So when I saw the shadow crawler, I was not thinking like prey, I was thinking like a predator." "Exactly," Dr. Rodriguez said. "And the shadow crawler could sense this. It realized that you were not something to be hunted. You were something that might hunt it." Professor Vex-High joined the conversation. "We want to test this theory. We have brought in several other predator species to see if you have the same effect on them." Jake felt nervous. "Are they as dangerous as the shadow crawler?" "They are all contained safely," Dr. Rodriguez assured him. "But we need to see if your response works on other predators too." The first test was with a creature called a void stalker. It was even bigger than the shadow crawler, with long tentacles and glowing eyes. When Jake entered the chamber, the creature immediately focused on him. Jake did the same thing he had done before. He looked directly at the creature, moved toward it calmly, and made himself appear larger. The void stalker hesitated, then slowly backed away. "Incredible," Dr. Kethmer said. The same response. They tested Jake with 5 more predator species. Each time, the result was the same. The predators would start to approach him, then recognize something about his behavior and back down. "It is not just coincidence," Dr. Rodriguez said. "Jake is somehow triggering predator recognition responses in all of these creatures." "But how?" Professor Vex-High asked. "These predators have never seen humans before." Dr. Rodriguez looked at the data on her tablet. "I think it is about confidence and intent. When Jake approaches these creatures, he is not showing fear or submission. He is showing calm readiness. The predators can sense that he is prepared to fight if necessary." "So they choose not to fight?" Dr. Morin asked. "Exactly. Most predators prefer easy prey. If they sense that their target might fight back effectively, they will look for something easier to hunt." Jake was amazed by what he was learning. "So humans naturally act like predators even when we are not trying to?" "Not all humans, Dr. Rodriguez said. But humans who grew up learning about dangerous animals, like you did with your grandfather, developed these instincts more strongly." Professor Vex-High was reviewing all the test data. "This changes everything we thought we knew about human behavior. If humans can naturally intimidate predators, it explains how they survived on such a dangerous planet." "But it also means something else," Dr. Rodriguez said slowly. "It means that humans are not just survivors. They are apex predators who have learned to control their predatory instincts." Jake thought about this. He had never considered himself a predator, but he could see what Dr. Rodriguez meant. Humans had climbed to the top of Earth's food chain not through strength or speed, but through intelligence and determination. What does this mean for humans in the galaxy? Jake asked. Dr. Rodriguez smiled. It means that the galaxy needs to reconsider what humans are capable of. You are not just another species trying to survive. You are a species that has evolved to be the ultimate predators. Jake looked around the laboratory at all the alien scientists studying him. He realized that his simple test with the shadowcrawler had revealed something important about his entire species. Humans were not just visitors to the galaxy. They were something new and different, something that other species had never encountered before, and Jake was just beginning to understand what that meant. 3 weeks after Jake's first encounter with the shadowcrawler, everything at the academy had changed. News of the human student who could make predators submit had spread across the galaxy. Scientists, reporters, and government officials were arriving at the academy every day. Jake was sitting in his room, looking out the window at the strange purple sky of Kepler 442b. His room was small but comfortable, with a bed, a desk, and a wall screen that could show images from anywhere in the galaxy. Right now, it was showing news reports about him. Human student revolutionizes predator studies, one headline read. Deathworld species shows unprecedented predator dominance, said another. Jake turned off the screen. He was tired of seeing his face on the news. He just wanted to be a normal student, but that seemed impossible now. There was a knock on his door. Jake opened it to find Dr. Rodriguez standing in the hallway. She was carrying a thick folder filled with papers. Jake, may I come in? She asked. I have some things to show you. Jake let her in, and they sat at his small desk. Dr. Rodriguez opened the folder and pulled out several documents. These are applications, she said. Applications from students all over the galaxy who want to study at Earth universities. Jake looked at the papers. There were hundreds of them. Why do they want to study on Earth? Because of you, Dr. Rodriguez said. What you did here made the galaxy realize that Earth is not just a dangerous world. It is a world that produces a very special type of person. She pulled out more papers. These are requests from various governments. They want to study human behavior. They want to understand how humans think and act. Jake felt uncomfortable. Are they afraid of humans now? Some are, Dr. Rodriguez said honestly. But most are just curious. They want to understand what makes humans different. Dr. Rodriguez showed him another document. This is a research proposal from the Galactic Science Council. They want to fund a major study of human evolution and behavior. They want to learn how Earth created a species like humans. Jake looked at the proposal. It was very long and full of scientific words he did not understand. What does this mean for humans? It means that humans are no longer unknown, Dr. Rodriguez said. The galaxy now knows that humans exist, and they know that humans are special. There was another knock on the door. This time it was Professor Vexhai, along with Jake's friends from class. Zara, Kevin, Amy, Lisa, Ryan, and Pip all crowded into the small room. Jake, we have news, Professor Vexhai said. Her crystal skin was glowing brightly, which meant she was excited. The Academy has approved a new program. The Human-Alien Exchange Program. What is that? Jake asked. It means that more humans will come to study here, Zara said, her patches glowing happily, and more alien students will go to study on Earth. Kevin nodded enthusiastically. I have already applied to study on Earth. I want to see where humans come from. Many students want to do the same, Amy said. After seeing what you did, everyone wants to understand humans better. Jake looked around at his friends. They were all excited about the idea of studying with more humans. But Jake was worried. What if other humans cannot do what I did? What if I am unusual, even for a human? Dr. Rodriguez smiled. That is a good question, Jake, so we decided to test it. She pulled out another document. We contacted several human colonies and asked for volunteers. 20 human students have agreed to come here for testing. Testing like what I did? Jake asked. Similar tests, Professor Vexhai said. We want to see if your responses are typical for humans or if you are unique. Over the next few days, the human volunteers arrived at the academy. They were all different ages and came from different human colonies. Some were from Mars, others from the outer colonies, and a few were even from Earth itself. Jake met them all in the main conference room. There was Maria Santos from Mars, a tall woman with dark hair who studied xenobiology. There was David Kim from Europa, a young man who worked with dangerous animals in the ice mines. There was also Susan Wright from Earth, an older woman who had grown up on a farm with many wild animals. So you are the famous Jake Morrison, Maria said with a smile. The human who made a shadow crawler back down? I am not famous, Jake said. I just did what felt natural. That is exactly what we want to study, David said. We want to see if what felt natural to you feels natural to other humans too. The testing began the next day. One by one, the human volunteers were exposed to the same predators that Jake had faced. The results were amazing. Maria faced the shadow crawler and had almost the same reaction as Jake. She moved toward it calmly, maintained eye contact, and made the creature back down. David did the same thing with the Void Stalker. Susan made a creature called a Razorclaw actually run away from her, but not all humans had the same response. Some of the volunteers showed fear and tried to hide or run away. Others tried to communicate with the predators or find ways to avoid conflict. Interesting, Dr. Rodriguez said as she reviewed the data. About 60% of the humans showed predator-like responses. The others showed more typical prey responses. What makes the difference? Professor Vexhai asked. Dr. Rodriguez thought about this. It seems to depend on their background. Humans who grew up around dangerous animals or in dangerous environments show stronger predator responses. Humans who grew up in safe environments behave more like other galactic species. Jake was fascinated by this discovery. So not all humans are natural predators? All humans have the potential, Dr. Rodriguez explained. But some humans develop these instincts more than others. It depends on their experiences and training. The news of the testing spread quickly through the academy. Students and professors gathered to discuss what it meant for the galaxy. If humans can naturally intimidate predators, Dr. Kethmer said during one faculty meeting, it means they could be very effective at dangerous jobs that other species cannot do. Like what? Asked Dr. Morin. Exploring dangerous worlds, dealing with hostile creatures, working in high-risk environments, Dr. Kethmer explained. Humans might be naturally suited for jobs that other species find too frightening. This gave Jake an idea. He went to Professor Vexhai with a proposal. What if we created a new class? Jake suggested. A class where humans teach other species how to deal with dangerous situations and other species teach humans about their own survival techniques. Professor Vexhai's crystal skin flickered with interest. That is a brilliant idea, Jake. A collaborative survival studies program. The new class was approved within a week. Jake found himself not just as a student but as a teacher. He worked with his alien classmates to share knowledge about survival techniques. Jake taught them about staying calm under pressure, about reading the body language of dangerous creatures, and about the importance of not showing fear. In return, his classmates taught him about their own species' survival methods. From Zara, he learned about light communication and how to use colors to confuse predators. From Kevin, he learned about evasive movement patterns. From Amy, he learned about camouflage techniques. From Lisa, he learned about tracking and hunting skills. The program was so successful that other academies across the galaxy began requesting similar classes. The Human-Alien Exchange program grew rapidly, with hundreds of students participating. Jake received a message from his family on Earth. His parents were proud of him, but they were also surprised by all the attention. We always knew you were special, his mother wrote. But we never imagined you would change how the galaxy sees humans. Jake wrote back, I did not change anything. I just showed them what humans have always been, We are not just survivors. We are people who face challenges head-on. Months later, Jake stood in the same classroom where he had first encountered the shadow crawler. But now the room was full of both human and alien students working together. They were studying predator behavior, but they were also learning about cooperation and understanding. The shadow crawler was still there, in its dome, but now it was used for educational purposes rather than testing. Students of all species would observe it and discuss different approaches to dealing with dangerous situations. Jake watched as Maria helped a nervous Thakarian student understand predator body language. Nearby, David was learning about phase shifting techniques from a Valerian student. The room was filled with the sounds of different species working together and learning from each other. Professor Vexhai approached Jake. You have done something remarkable here, Jake. You have not just shown us what humans can do. You have shown us what all species can do when they work together. Jake smiled. My grandfather always said that the best way to deal with danger is to understand it. But he also said that the best way to understand something is to learn from others who have dealt with it before. Wise words, Professor Vexhai said. Your grandfather would be proud. Jake looked around the classroom one more time. Human and alien students were working side by side, sharing knowledge and learning from each other. The galaxy was no longer afraid of humans or curious about them. They were simply accepted as another species with their own unique abilities and perspectives. The predator test had been designed to show how different species responded to danger, but in the end, it had shown something more important. It had shown that when different species work together,